Hello and welcome back to another Toolbox episode, where I showcase some of the mods used in my builds, sharing how I use them, any tips I might have, where to get them from, and of course, full props to the amazing people who make them. In this episode, we are taking a look at the Flying Junction and Compact Tunnel Entry mods from Enzo JZ. Before I get started, if you enjoy these videos and find them helpful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop a like. Let's swing over to the test bench and get stuck into it. So guys, we're on the unscripted test bench and we're going to take a look at the Flying Junction and the Compact Tunnel Entry. First of all, we'll take a quick look at the Flying Junction. If you probably watched the intro to this video, I've highlighted how I've used it already, I think on the rugby approach, using pretty simple really, just using a little bit of curvature on it and the same track, top and bottom, and just choosing which tracks I need, how many I need, top or bottom as well. But what we're going to do is I'm just going to show you what you can do a little bit more with it. So when you've downloaded the mod, it will be in your track instructions, and so will the other one as well. So will the other one. And this is a problem I'm having with the new patch, where it takes a while to decide if it wants to give me the menu and the options to select. But we're going to go to the Compact Tunnel Entry here. You have a selection of different color retaining walls. I'm just going to go with this one. I'm not a big fan of the light ones. I feel that they don't look quite real. When you've got catenary on your tracks, I find that the height of 9 is best, because otherwise the catenary can sort of protrude inside the retaining wall or the roof of the retaining wall, and it doesn't quite look quite right. If you're not using catenary, then fine, you can set whatever height you want as long as your trains look right going through it. But for me, because I use a lot of catenary with mine, I go with 9 because it just looks about right and kind of goes in line with when you create tunnels through land. Right, so what you end up with is a small little bit of Flying Junction, basically, over and under 1-on-1 by default. What you can do though is we're going to go through, we're going to select our track, and we're going to go with a high-speed track just to keep this nice and simple. And I'm going to show you why in a second. So we've got a high-speed track. It's gone 2 and 2, 2 top, 2 bottom. As you can see here, you can select, you can have 4 lower, 2 top. You can go, as far as 10 upper, 2 top, so that's quite good. But for this demonstration, we're going to go 3 and we're going to go 1 below. Okay, so this is how a great way if you want to make grade separated junctions, if you want to get some flyovers going, if you want to. And the wonderful thing about this asset, or mod shall I say, is it will deform the earth and the land around it less. So sometimes when you're trying to sort of create a bridge and an under over or a grade separated junction, and when you do it the more traditional way, we've put in the track and creating bridges, you sometimes can end up with a situation where the earth and the land, and you can't get it right. It doesn't quite look tidy enough, and you do want some retaining wall around it. This is a nice, quick, simple way of doing it. Obviously, we want to put catenary on, and the crossing angle is basically how far, so your crossing angle is on this one, obviously, for example, is the Flying Junction. The upper tracks are going over from the right to the left, and the under from the left to the right. And if we move this closer to the middle, it gets longer and extended. If we switch it across and go to the minuses, it turns it round. So we have our under going from right to left and our over. And then obviously you can make these small and big. What we can also do is change the radius of the individual levels. So we can change the radius of our upper, and we can move it right here. Obviously, what happens is when the radius becomes too much for the crossing angle, you'll get an error like this. That's what I found. But if I lower the crossing angle, I get my radius back. And obviously, you can see there's a nice curve on our upper track radius there. And obviously, what you can do is then, if you want your other track to go in the opposite direction, you can do that and have a curve with your under track going like so. So you can suit it to your needs, basically. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you an example of how I created the rugby kind of approach. And basically all I did was I created a small angle, and we had an upper and a lower, and I think we went for something like this. We had 1-on-1, and all I wanted to do was create an angle where my lower track radius needs to be dead straight. All I want to do was create an angle. Let's just get this straight. And that's the wrong side. We need to change our crossing angle as well. That's really long. We need to go that way. I wanted to create an angle where I wanted one track to cross cross over and go to the other side, because obviously on the other side of rugby, what we end up with, the orientation of the tracks is different on the other side of rugby. So the approach to rugby is all about getting those tracks ready for the platform, so when they leave rugby, the orientation is right off, obviously onto Nuneaton after that. So what you end up with is, before rugby, we end up with an up down track orientation. After rugby to Nuneaton, we end up with an up down track orientation. Basically what that means is we end up with, I'll just do a quick demonstration with some signals. We end up, so we've got 4 tracks. So before rugby, our track layout, for example, is 4 separate tracks, and basically you have your high speed. So if so anything, I guess nowadays would be anything high speed, which is your Virgin Pendolinos, Voyagers, etc. on the left, which will be skipping most stations, and your slower services, so I think it's London Northwestern, I can't remember, I think that's recently changed hands, would be on your right, which would be stopping at your more your sort of lesser stations, is the best way I can put it. And there'd be slower services. Ideally, obviously, normally as well, those the locomotives on them might have a slightly lower top speed, but in general, with the West Coast Main Line, I think the speed limit is 125 anyway, so everybody's kind of going about that. You would have a couple of the other locomotives on this line that maybe bypass a lot of the other stations and use it on and off. So, but that's the idea anyways. Your faster services on the left, your slower services on the right. So coming out of London towards rugby, the general look is, it's the one way, it doesn't really matter, is you'd have your down and down, up and up. And when we say down and down, is up is, even though it's facing, it may look weird to you, up is apparently towards London and down would be to the north, even though in our heads and when we look at geography, we go up to the north and down to the south. But the way the railways work, apparently from what I've read, is it's this orientation. That's how it is. Now when it comes out of rugby to Nuneaton, let's just delete these signals rather than me creating another one. Oops, delete a bit of track. When we come out of rugby, and the reason why we have the grade separated junction just before is because the track orientation changes to down, down, up, up. So what we need to do is we need to get one of the tracks over before the platform. So this is how we created the rugby approach. So let's go back into our high speed and let's create, we're just going to do this. This is going to be really rough. It's going to be really ugly. So we have, actually, let's just rise that a little bit. So what we've done is we have here is our, actually, no, we don't want that. I'm lying. So let's go to our track construction. So we're going to create this quickly, very quickly. So we're going to use this as an example. We're going to drop it into the land a little bit. So we have this here. And then what I did is basically I created a dummy piece and then another piece after this. And this is just, I wanted to keep the track consistent that went over the top and keep the consistent height as well. Then I deleted the one in the middle. And then I created a piece of track across. Okay, so what we have here is, let's have our approach. So this, we have this track here. Keep it at the, actually can come up because we want it to. This is our high speed up and down. This is our slower service, and then what we have then is coming off the other end is our high speed comes in to one platform. A high speed up goes into this platform from here. This track now becomes both being down because it's come over from this side, and then on the outside of this one, like so. Let's just extend these for prettiness effects. On the outside, you have your other down. So you've gone from basically here, from up. See, I can't even get it right. Down, the other way around. And on the other side, we end up with down, up. And that's how we get that grade separated junction nice and simply done. I'm actually quite proud of that. I've done that quite quick. Now, that's just a simple use and how I've used it so far on my rugby build on the UK inspired rail network. Okay, obviously what you can also do is I've shown you just the basics of how we do the rugby junction. But what we can also do is if we go back into our track constructions, let's say you just want you can also create a bridge where you want your track under or over in a road, which is really helpful as well. What you do is, obviously you can't see it in the options, but we can go into configure. Once you've set up all your other sort of predetermined options, we can change the crossing angle here. Is what we can do is once you get your angle right, is we can do that, delete that. Once you find sort of the snapping point, well, not the snapping point, the mouse pointer where it selects the right piece, then we can go into the configure option and we can go into road, and we're just going to select something very, very basic. Let's just go with that, and we can replace that with that. And there we have it. We have a high-speed country road with the railway going over the top, which I think looks quite nice. Obviously, we can do the same thing with the orientation, the curvature, change all that however we want it. But it's another way of creating a simple crossover that actually looks quite tidy without deforming the earth around it so much. Obviously, what we could do with this, if we wanted it a bit higher, just a little tip, is we could change this bit of track and lower the terrain underneath it, or make this a little bit higher and actually create a bridge rather than having the land change, sort of, you know, having the land sort of raise up, and you then get rid of this sort of steep kind of bit of land that you can't really do much with next to the track on the lower side, which is quite nice. So just something to take in mind, something I've played around with is just raising it up a little bit more and making these bridges. So sometimes just cheekily, all I do is, if I want to create a bridge here, for example, is all I do is I pop this down as far as it will go, like so. I think that's as low as we're going to be able to get that with that land. Go into my tracks. High, oh, not J, high speed. And then I still can't do it because the land won't go low enough. However, let's try that again. Why can't I get the land any lower? That's a bit of a shame, isn't it? Maybe if I go deeper. There we go. Okay, so now we're hitting sand. So maybe that might be low enough there. We've got a little bit of water showing here, but this is just an example where you might have to play with the terrain. There we go. And then sometimes I'm going to use just one of these as an example. And it just looks a little bit tidier, obviously without the water, which we don't want. But sometimes you could just remove that, and you could do that, and then you'd only have the little bit of the land there as well. Just finishes it off a little bit. Okay, what are we on next? I'm just going to leave all these here for you to look at. What are we on next? So next up, we are looking at the compact tunnel entry, which is from the same author, Enzo J. And this is really nice. Again, if you want to create like a different type of tunnel or send it, I use these a lot for my... where my use in the UK inspired rail network, where I'm using the London Underground and I want it to either go underground or come up, especially around the Bakerloo line, because I find them quite nice to work with other railways around them. Again, we have some slight different options. You have your surface turn here, so you can change the surface orientation of the turn. You can choose your tracks. You can choose the underground turn as well, which is you can't really see when you're placing it. It's a real shame. So it's something you're going to have to mess around with and maybe place like so. And then if you go into your track view, obviously you can see it afterwards. You can delete. It has multiple options here. So let's just select high speed tracks here. You have your wall colors, like I said before. We're going to go with this one. Portal reference height. So it's where you want the portal to actually its height to be, so you can have it like this. You get less of a slope and it's not going so deep. Obviously what you end up with here is on the right is just some terrain deformities. There we go. So we're going to keep that at 0 for now, just for the demonstration. What you can also do is you can add a piece of track right and left. So say you've got some track you want to stay on one level and some to go up, or you can do. You can set your tracks electrified, yes, sorry. And then we're going to pop that down. And like this one, you can go into the configure. And what we can basically, we can edit this. We can mess around with it. We can add more tracks. We go to electrified tracks. Let's just select high speed for this demonstration. But obviously, if you've got different railways you want to use, we can add some more tracks on the left and the right to this. Not only that, like the other one, we can convert some of these to road if we like. So we can have a road alongside rather than the track. And you can use these and then you can play with these at your you know, use your imagination. You can have a road going down underground alongside a track. You can have more tracks going under. As I said, you can, let's build a new one. You can have track numbers, which is your total numbers, so you can have more tracks going underneath. And they're a great way as well, like the other mod, what's it called? The Flying Junction. They're another fantastic way of getting tracks underground nicely, tidily. And just clean going under. I use these a lot and try to use them when I can. My only issue is that I don't always use the options in the configure enough to make my junctions look even better. There's a few places, especially on the UK inspired rail network, where I would have liked to use this a little bit more. One thing that I do struggle with, and you guys will when using this mod, is messing about with the orientation of the depth and minimizing what happens on this side. Okay, with this one it doesn't seem so bad, but for example, let's just keep that on the level, and that one, and then when this one comes out alongside, you will end up with this. That's because I think there's a slight, where this is carrying on its upward trajectory and this is already level. What you also find with Transport Fever is it tries to even off and it'll create a small ramp before it levels off on the other side. Also, what I've also noticed is, even though these are alongside, because of the retaining wall between them, your tracks aren't, as you can see, it curves in and they're not exactly next to it. So it's something to take into account and something I've played with and tried to keep minimal. If you keep this track straight, also be aware if your entry is quite, if you attack, let's do it the other way around as an example. Sorry, I'm babbling it on. If we do this and then we add our track construction, something to take into account if you're somebody that's into things looking nice. Oh, hold on, I need to get off that. Is when you do it this way around, you will end up with quite a sharp change when you've gone level to down slope, and that's why you end up with this kind of nice ramp here, because it's keeping this transition into the asset as smooth as possible. So just something to bear in mind, that you end up, your trains do look quite hilarious, especially if you're going for deeper tunnels. Quite hilarious when they hit this and suddenly go boop, boop, and down. And that's something I've got an issue with, again, on UK inspired rail network, where I've got a couple all like that and I stare at them and they really irritate me, and it's something I do need to return to and go back to and clean up a little bit and maybe play about with it. I just haven't had time recently. Anyway, I hope you found this small toolbox tutorial helpful. It's just some examples of how I use them. Thank you very much to Enzo J for creating them. The links will be in the description below, and I'll see you in the next one.